The technology landscape is exploding, and it has never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. There's so much information out there, it can be hard to know where to start or who to trust. Your host, David Paul, is a seasoned venture capital investor that has founded his own investment firm, DWP Capital. He's a straight shooter that cuts through all the noise to bring you real and authentic conversations with investors, founders, and operators in the startup ecosystem. Join him each week to stay current with today's trends and get smarter about startups and tech investing.
Hey everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where I talk to founders, operators, and investors about all things value creation and startups. It's January of 2023. We just finished off a year of podcasting. I'm fat as fuck from the holidays, and I'm really looking forward to diving in with the guest today, who is Brad Thomas, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Evercast, which is a SaaS platform servicing media companies. And he is a Phoenix guy. He's raised approximately 15 million, around 65 FTEs. Is that right?
Yeah, about that. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So Brad, give us a spiel. What's going on? Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your company.
Well, first of all, I was looking in the mirror too, and I noticed I need to, take a little break on drinking a little bit. And
I gotta stop doing Coke.
Yeah, definitely. It's always the Coke. Exactly. But no, man. I mean, it's pretty crazy that a guy I grew up in Chicago, but I moved here 20 years ago, so I've been here longer than growing up in Chicago. But it's crazy how a company in Phoenix basically, to a certain extent, saved Hollywood from COVID. Mm-hmm. And we weren't. Obviously, no one could ever plan for anything like that, but it was definitely a roller coaster ride. It was a roller coaster ride leading up to COVID, and then it was a roller coaster ride ever since COVID. So it's been like two different roller coaster rides. One's just the whole startup process and trying to raise capital for an idea, the vaporware, right? It's like, I got this fucking awesome idea. Mm-hmm. Come on, Mr. Best Friend, family, whoever, at certain points during the early days when we were trying to raise capital, I thought I'd just go out on Scottsdale Road and start spinning one of those signs saying I need capital, mm-hmm. willing to do maybe not so good things to get it, but
and you have to have conviction. And the bottom line is there's always a doubt in your mind. You're like, God, I hope this fucking works.
Well, dude, absolutely. I think I talked about this in another podcast, but there's a fine line. Like, you don't want to lie to investors, right? But also, especially in the early days, if you tell the complete truth, they won't invest in you.
No.
So there's like this fine line between being an entrepreneur and trying to sell your dream, but also not going overboard, like Elizabeth Holmes or something like that, where you go completely in the opposite direction. So there is that. You have to sell it, but you don't want to go too far in the other direction. But those early days, the interesting thing too, what I've noticed is that it actually was easier, in my opinion, even though we have raised $15 million, it was easier to raise money before COVID. Because once you get product market fit and traction and all these things that any entrepreneur, seeks to get, at a certain point, the microscope gets deeper and deeper on you, right? The better you do, the more investors are like, okay, all right, I don't know. I mean, can you really sustain this? Or, are you really going to have, compound annual growth and, blah, 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 blah. It's like, so it's like, as you get further down the road and you become more successful.
What's your sales efficiency? That's not going to scale.
Oh, it's not. Yeah.
So people get much more myopic on TAM and
all that stuff. And before you have all that growth and stuff, if you're able to sell the vision well enough, then you're just selling vision. They don't really have a product to see. They don't really have too much to see other than the fact that I like this person and seems like they have a cool idea. I believe them. And a lot of my early investors, one in particular, who saved my ass so many times, like I've lost count, but he was always like, listen, man, I'm not investing into Evercast, I'm investing into you, because I've invested into great ideas that have failed, and I've invested into shitty ideas, or ideas that I didn't think really had that good of a shot, and they succeeded, right? So he's like, sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason to why things succeed or fail. I think a lot of it does have to do with circumstance, a certain element of luck. Obviously you have to work your ass off and do all those types of things. Sure. But at the end of the day, there is that element how you could be, I mean, I'm sure someone tried starting Uber before Uber.
Yeah, of course.
But
That's not. Yeah, no. I mean,
You
there's a trail of tears with every great idea.
Absolutely. So, in those early days, I'll never forget how, it's like you just keep getting to a certain point and then you hit like this wall, and then you keep getting to a next point, keep hitting the wall and trying to get that product market fit. And for us, after it took us about 2 years just to get the software to the point where it was actually, I would say, good enough to demo. And by the way, basically what is
Evercast?
Yeah.
Let's go into that.
I was going to go to there right now. Yeah. So basically what it is we like to call it Zoom on steroids. So, like when you can screen share on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So originally, this is like before COVID, but the whole idea was that we would create this super, super high quality screen share, like potentially up to 4K, 60 frames per second. And so an editor or a visual effects artist or whoever who's, working on content could stream their workstations in this incredible high resolution quality with no drop frames. I mean, basically when you're on an Evercast session, it looks like you're watching a Netflix show or, something on TV, even though it's actually being streamed straight out of some editors or some animators' workstation. So it enables remote collaboration in a way that's never been really done before, specifically for media creators.
So I'm a dumbass. So you have to like help me. So so you describe it as a screen share. Is it really a screen share?
It does screen sharing, super, super high quality screen sharing, but you can also stream devices through it as well. So it doesn't have to be a screen share. Like, without getting too technical, but especially in Hollywood and in like professional media creation, they have all these devices where their editing systems or their animating systems are going through certain hardware devices, and we connect directly with those hardware devices and can stream that content straight into this Evercast, we'll call it Evercast conferencing room. And so directors and producers and team members can literally sit there and watch, whatever it is that they're working on in super high resolution with surround sound if you choose to have that.
Crowdsource ideas and
yeah. I mean, it's
that would seem like a more, because it would just seem to me that would be the use case, right?
100%. Well, and before COVID, I was traveling to LA for basically 2 years. And we were lucky because we happened to meet this guy who's now one of my business partners. He's a co-founder of Evercast, another co-founder of Evercast, but his name is Roger Barton. And Roger is a well-known film editor. He's done Transformers and Star Wars and all these big movies in Scottsdale, wow, in LA. Mm-hmm. And, he was looking for a solution at the time as well, because one of the problems is that a lot of people don't want to travel. Like someone like Roger, who's an editor, he goes on location for 6 months away from his family when he doesn't really need to do it because he can do all the editing back in LA while, they're out filming and stuff like that. But it's never been allowed to happen up until something like Evercast came along, right? And, back before I met Roger, the reason why we created the software was because in my previous company, when we were working on video content, it was always such a pain in the ass, especially if you're working with companies that content creators that are remote, right? Let's say I hire an advertising agency in New York and they're making this video for me. For them to send me clips and then I review those clips and I notate those clips, like at 2 minutes and 26 seconds, I don't like this or whatever, then it goes back to them and then the editor will make the edits and then send more files to me.
Right.
It's so much easier when you can just hop on.
Put a platform on.
Yeah, put a platform on it, hop on live, and then no matter where you meet, no matter where you are in the world, you all get together and you start working on those edits in real time without having to wait for that like round trip of feedback to happen. So it makes the feedback extremely instant. And I'm sure
version control was also a huge issue.
Absolutely. Yeah. For version control and all that type of stuff. So it just keeps people more engaged it keeps teams more engaged in the process of content creation, right? Because the cool thing is it could be 8:00 at night and the editor could just call up the director and be like, hey, can you hop into an Evercast room for 5 minutes? I just got to show you something, all right? Instead of sending that person a file and then waiting for their feedback, you just hop into an Evercast room and it's literally like it's like you're sitting with the editor just watching the edits happen in real time. And you can, those 5-minute little mini micro sessions here and there, it really helps push the project along. And before COVID, let me go back to Roger real quick. So Roger just so happened to be living next door to a friend of ours because he was going through a divorce at the time. And his relationship with his wife was deeply impacted by the fact that for his, I think, 15 or 20-year career, or however long it was, Hollywood kept him away from the house, which means it kept him away from his wife, it kept him away from his kid and all that type of stuff. And so when our neighbor happened to find out who Roger was, he walked over to his house and was like, hey, my buddy's working on this new software. Roger's like, oh my God, this would be amazing. Gave him a demo, saw it. I think it was Legendary. So he talked to Legendary. Legendary said, hey, it passes all the necessary security stuff. So if try it with the director, if he lets you use it, then you guys can use it. And then on some Sunday afternoon, they used it. And after a 3-hour session, the first session, the director is like, dude, you don't need to come to Atlanta to film this movie. Like, you can stay in LA and we'll just do it remotely like you're doing right now. And Legendary approved it. So therefore, pretty much it was Godzilla King of the Monsters, which came out like in 2018, I think it was.
It's my favorite movie.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
I've seen that shit 15 times.
I'm sure it is. But yeah, that whole movie, a good part of that movie was made remotely through Evercast. And that obviously at that point, Roger saw the light, became a pretty significant investor, early on investor at the time. And for the next 2 years, he gave me a room at his house, and his Rolodex was crazy, right? So because he's worked with everyone in the industry. So for 2 years, I'm going to LA every week, spending at least 3 to 4 days there every week. Thank God, not in a hotel, but at his house, and just knocking on doors. He would set up meetings, or him and I would both go to meetings, or I'd go by myself. And it was basically trying to get these executives and these creatives to see the light that, first of all, there's a huge cost savings just when people don't have to travel, right? But number two, a lot of these directors and producers and stuff, they don't live necessarily near the studios. They live in Malibu or, places where, in LA traffic, a one-way trip from Malibu into Burbank is, it's going to be a 90-minute ride. Yes. So it's a 3-hour round trip. You don't have to do that every day, right? So we were trying to sell the cost savings and the lifestyle benefits at the time. But
so would you say, like, today, and like seeing it in hindsight, was the value of your software, was it the high resolution screen share, like, or was it the workflow, and the crowdsourcing functionality? Yeah. Like, how do you think about, like, really what was the technology value?
I would say the value number one was the quality of the stream.
Got it.
It doesn't matter what the source is, whether it was a screen share or whether it was you're pulling in a video source from a hardware device or whatever. It is the fact that you just get this super solid, buttery smooth stream that looks like you're just watching the computer monitor at the editor's desk.
That's
basically
a pretty technical thing, right?
Well,
I'm not a technologist, but that would seem like that would be...
dude, that's why it took us 2 years before we could even get it to a point to demo, because it's one thing to capture an amazing high resolution stream like that, but the other challenge is also creating low latency, right? Which means that, like, whatever is... Have you been on a phone call or sometimes a Zoom session or whatever, where they're like, you start seeing latency where people are talking over each other?
Yeah.
Well, it was really big for us to keep our latency at a sub 100 millisecond level, because anything under 100 milliseconds of latency, it basically feels like you're in the same room, right? Yeah. So if the director is in Australia and the editor is in LA, and the director's watching something and goes, "Oh, stop right there." The editor is hearing that command right away and stopping the playback of whatever it is they're watching, which is exactly what they would do if they were sitting in the same room anyway, working on an edit, as an example, right? So the other thing too was our deep understanding of professional creative workflow, right? So not only did we have this amazing stream that we could produce, but also not every setup in Hollywood, or even just in professional advertising, like, not every setup is the same. They use different equipment, there's different monitors and all these things. And so over the course of all these years, leading up to COVID, we built this kind of intellectual knowledge base of how to pretty much stream anything. I don't care if you were an editor or an animator or a sound designer or whatever the heck you did. We could stream 99% of the stuff that you could throw at us. We could figure out a way to stream that into an Evercast room so you could collaborate with your team remotely. And then but old habits die hard, and, getting people to see the light was obviously much more difficult than we ever could have thought. And, leading up to COVID, there was a moment in 2000.
Everyone was getting Me Too. They were distracted.
Dude, it was nuts. Yeah. It was crazy.
Just too many, really unfortunate incidents happen. Those guys,
absolutely,
they had their hands full.
Yeah. One day I'm talking to an executive, and the next moment he gone. So I have to start the whole sales cycle again, right?
My champion's gone.
Dude, and that's the thing is, we'll call it the first few chapters of Evercast. It was a story about innovating. It was about bringing in the fuel, which is capital, and trying to convince investors that we had something here. And if we could stick in long enough, it would work out. Right. And I've got like one of the examples I'll bring up, and it's an example I bring up quite often is, so it was like 2000 it was after the Godzilla thing. Right. And we owed our developers like $350,000. And there's a line where people think they're fucked, and there's a line where you're actually fucked. Mm-hmm. Most people actually give up at the first line.
Right. Oh, 100%.
So there's this second line in that distance. Let's say it's a football field, right?
I love that. The two lines.
There's two lines.
And because it's the thing is, entrepreneurs, if you're good, will always figure it out.
100%, which leads me. So there's a book that Ben Horowitz from Andreessen wrote, which is called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Mm-hmm. And in the book, he talks about there's always a move to make. I think it's like near the end of the book, mm-hmm. right? And that line in that book stuck with me. And so there was this one moment where we were at that second line. Like, we exhausted all options. The lights are about to be shut off. I'm telling my fiance at the time that I'm going to have to go out and get a job at Home Depot for the time being so we can put food on the table. And I'm going to have to call my investors and tell them I lost all their money. Just like the entrepreneur's worst nightmare, right? Mm-hmm. So we were truly, truly fucked. And all the investors that we currently had, I already talked to. They didn't want to do it or couldn't do it or couldn't justify more risk. And so there was only one guy left, and this is a guy named Rick. And Rick, at the time, already was in for like $500,000. And he already turned me down 3 weeks earlier. But this was a moment where, I forgot the most important part though. So we were truly fucked, and we found an investor who was going to come in for $1 million mm-hmm. and save the day. And got the subscription agreement written up and all that good stuff, sent it out to him. And then he even signed the subscription agreement. But then the morning that he was supposed to wire, he calls me and says, dude, I've been thinking about it. I'm sorry. I can't do it. Like, the risk is too high for me. I just can't. I've been sleeping on. I've been losing sleep over it, thinking about it. And I just can't. I can't.
Well, at least
invest.
he called you.
He did. No. I've had investors totally ghost me, which is, by the way, for any of you investors out there, it's not worth it. It's not cool. You can tell me no, it's fine. I'll take it, right? So that this guy, he called and told me, and it was the first time. There's been some very, very serious moments where we had to look in the mirror and kind of be tested. But this was one of those moments where we were fucked the day before, and we thought we were saved, and now we're completely fucked again. And so I'm actually getting physically sick. I have to lay on the couch at my house. My dog hops on my chest. It's like, what's wrong?
And licking your pathetic, licking the Cheetos
totally.
off your mouth.
Like, you're one pathetic loser. No offense. So I'm just, and I'm like, now all the nightmare scenarios are going back through my mind, and I'm thinking about Amanda and how am I going to have to tell her again that, okay, well, I'm fucked again. Like, mm-hmm. I was saved yesterday and now I'm fucked again. And, there's this guy, Rick, who turned me down 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, at least he'll listen to me. Mm-hmm. I know he'll at least, if he's in town, he will at least meet with me. And sure as shit, he just so happened to be in town that day. Long story short, I went over to his house. 2 hours later, he looked me in the eye and said, I'm doing this for you. I believe you can do this. And he wrote me a $400,000 check to save the company. And actually, it was such an impactful moment in my life that I keep a picture of it on my cell phone wallpaper here.
Nice.
So that's him signing the check as a reminder. This is a reminder that no matter where we've gone and where I take Evercast into the future and what I do after Evercast, like, it's a reminder of the shit that I've had to deal with in order to get to where we are. And back to Ben's book, if it wasn't for that book, and I highly recommend any entrepreneur reading that book specifically.
And investor, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's so hard. If someone told me everything that I was going to have to go through to get this company to where it is, like if someone was to be like, this is going to happen and that's going to happen, I still think I would have done it. But until you actually go through it, you don't know what you're truly capable of lifting yourself out of, right? Mm-hmm. I think we're all we're all risk adverse to a certain extent, but sometimes, you rise up to the occasion and you're able to pull it off. And so that was a very significant moment for me. And that book, if it wasn't for reading that book and having that, there's always a move to make. There's always a move going through my mind. I don't know if I would have made that fucking phone call. Because I was, at a certain point, not only is your belief in your idea being tested, but also it's like, I like this guy. Not only is he an investor, but I like him. And so am I lying to him? Like, he's already in for $500,000. And if I'm going to ask him for another, and hell, I didn't even need 400,000. I needed 350 exact. Am I stealing from this guy? That's what kept going through my mind. But, where did you feel like in your gut? You saw something. There's obviously something going on. Yeah,
right.
We already had revenue. All
right, so you had revenue.
Yeah, we're at that moment. I think we were doing maybe like 30,000 a month.
Okay, so you had early signal, product market fit.
100%.
You had conviction.
100%.
Yeah, and that means a lot when you can sell somebody in the eye like, dude, this is fucking working.
And my thesis to the investors at the time was that it wasn't going to be a pandemic, but I was actually selling the idea that there was going to be some economic downturn. That we were just due for one, and that the studios would start looking for ways to save money, and travel would be one of the first things to go. And what's really interesting now is that, so obviously we COVID hits and we have this ginormous explosion of growth, and our brand becomes a household name in Hollywood and all that type of stuff. But now, as COVID is starting to hopefully back away, now we're starting to talk to advertising companies and talk to studios. And now the cost saving thing seems to start because of
it's resonating.
It's resonating, yes, because now we don't know who knows what's going to happen in 2023 with the economy and all that type of stuff. And so you can tell a lot of these companies that create content are starting to consider, okay, so what if we need to save some cost here? Where are we going to save it? Well, travel 100% is going to be the first thing to go, or one of the first things, unless it's absolutely 100% necessary. But yeah, man, it was March 8th. March 8th hit. And I'll never forget, like, Doubletree Road being completely empty. And there was no one out. And I went into the office and I looked into our HubSpot, CRM, and it was just like, holy shit, what's happening here? And then every day, and by the way, at the time, we had, I think, 3 developers. And it was me, Roger, who, by the way, Roger also had a full-time job still doing editing and everything like that. So it was me, Roger, and this other guy, Alex. So those are the 3 founders. And there's actually a 4th founder too. And
I founded it. There's I think I own a little piece. So
yeah, I'm sure somewhere
everyone's a founder.
Our cap table's about 10 miles long. But seriously, like, it was crazy to see how much came in. And it was, so not only was it, and Roger was in LA, so it was me and Alex here, along with one other employee at the time. It was 3 other employees at the time. 2 salespeople, and then, one guy who just helped with support and helped me onboard people. So literally it was us onboarding hundreds and hundreds of TV shows and movies and blah, blah, blah.
And what do you do? Is your revenue model, do you charge by the project?
Yeah, well, we don't charge by project. We charge by room. So you pay for, like, picture the Evercast room, like a virtual, like, Zoom room, right? Like, instead of paying per seat, you're paying for that room. So it's basically, it's like, let's just say it's 650, or no, it's like $750 a month.
Yeah. And so the room, like, that's where you can get some, like, that's where the TAM expansion kind of comes in.
Absolutely.
Because if you were relying on just the amount of studios, you would have a smaller market.
Correct, right? Exactly. Yeah. And now what's starting to happen is, like, we're getting interest because, we like to, not only do we have the highest quality stream and just conferencing experience in general, but we also have, we have to be very secure for all the studios and stuff that use the platform and everything that a movie like Top Gun, for example, a good part of that movie was made remotely through Evercast. Tom was traveling between LA and London, I believe it was, or whatever it was. He really didn't, from my understanding,
that movie was so good, wasn't
Top
it?
Gun?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we got a credit too, which is cool. What's really cool is we got a credit in 3 movies in 2022. We got a credit in Top Gun, got a credit in Jurassic World, and I got a credit in Avatar.
Yeah.
Both of which, all 3 of those movies, we were part of the remote collaboration strategy. I mean, Avatar alone, I think they were collaborating over 2 or 3 continents or something like that. I mean, it was crazy. And actually, the last time I was in LA before COVID hit was when Cameron still had a house in, I think it was in I was in Malibu, and I was there to set up the workstation to make sure that everything would work properly and everything like that. And then literally a week later, that's when COVID hit. But so we had before COVID, we did have some significant people using the platform. Top Gun was already using us before COVID.
Yeah, good usage.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, but again, it was hard. It was hard to try to prove that we could scale this thing. And then how were you able to out engineer? And I don't even know if this was a priority, but like, video conferencing, that's kind of a mature product, right? In general, right? And like, Zoom, I think kind of like, kicked Cisco, in the ass because they made a better user experience, I think, around the product. But the core technology of that was Zoom's win right there. It was just trying to make it as stupid simple as possible.
And lightweight and pretty.
Yep.
And then now I look at you and it's like, it seems like the whole, if you get me right, it's not so much the wraparound product is phenomenal, but there's really underlying IP and just how the picture gets rendered.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got this new thing called Pixel Weave, where now we're processing the stream through the GPU and not the CPU, which is fantastic because what happens is a lot of times if you have an underpowered computer and that computer is processing Adobe Premiere or Avid Media Composer, it's already doing a lot of computations just with running those pieces of software. And then you throw Evercast into the loop, which is also trying to encode those things and stream it out into like a video conferencing room. It can be very taxing on the CPU for, let's just say, less than ideal computers. But now we've moved the processing over to the GPU, which usually is not being used nearly to its fullest extent, right? So we offload some of the computations from the CPU to the GPU. Which makes it so you can have a slower computer and still just put off this badass stream.
So why hasn't like Zoom done this?
I think part of it is because Zoom and all the other video conferencing platforms, they're, I think, more geared towards scale and,
they're growing super horizontally.
100%.
They're not going deep.
No. Yeah. And by the way, like now that we've matured more, I'd like to say that this whole idea of this screen sharing on steroids and streaming on steroids, that's kind of like our old trick. That's what we started. That's how we became known. How dope would it
be if Zoom bought you?
Oh, I mean, be awesome. Badass. Yeah.
Zoom,
my number.
Yeah.
But I think with us, now, for example, we're taking the software we now do like full color, for example, right? So we do a 10-bit 444 color. We do HDR. So like, on your TV when it shows HDR, well, you can now stream HDR content through Evercast. So the people on the other end who are watching it are also receiving HDR. Can't even come close to that with any of the video conferencing platforms. We have integrations into, certain partners. So you can, there's this company called Media Silo, and we integrate directly with them. So you can stream assets in Media Silo directly into Evercast, and people can collaborate over those files together. But the color accuracy is a very crucial part, especially when it comes to, let's say, if you're working on visual effects or animation, right? Because if you're just working on if you're just editing a movie and you're not close to the finishing part of it, color isn't as important. But when when you're working on visual effects or animation, where you want to make sure that whatever colors you're seeing on the animator's workstation, that the director and the other team members who aren't there locally are seeing the same colors remotely. Because I never realized this until I got into the industry, how important coloring is to the overall movie making, TV show, commercial making process. Like color is a very important. Yes. Yeah. Like we just take it for granted. We watch something on TV and we're like, oh, it looks pretty, right? It looks nice, right? But you don't realize that there is a whole color science going in to coloring a movie, right? Remember like Breaking Bad, for example, like all the Breaking Bad episodes had a certain patina about them, like kind of on the yellowish side, right? That's all intentional because color can help bring out emotion, along with sound and lighting and all that other
where do
stuff.
you think like the streaming battle's going to end up? I always that's why I never bought Netflix. I was like, okay, it's really fast growing, but it costs a lot of money to make these things.
Oh my God. It's a ton of money.
And it's like these actors and these writers, there's no moat there. They'll go to the next highest bidder.
Absolutely.
I think Disney did it right because they're buying franchises.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
But where do you think this is going?
I don't know, man. I think first of all, it does come down to the quality of the content.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, Netflix does make really good content. They've got some very good shows, and they have to continue to innovate on those concepts. Like a new Squid Games is coming out. I think a new Stranger Things will be coming out eventually. And you have to find those kind of key pieces of content that are represented by your streaming platform. You got to own those. For Paramount, it's probably Yellowstone and stuff like that. So the more hits you can get, the more likely it is that people are going to stay on your platform. But where it's going to go is I think it's going to be, I think it's going to come down. I think the three major players will always be Netflix. It'll be Netflix, Apple. I think Apple's going to do a really good job. They're already doing a good job.
And Disney.
And Disney. Yeah.
Apple's got a lot. Apple's got I need more shit from Apple.
Absolutely. Yeah. They
need to step it up.
They're definitely, they're definitely working on a lot, I'm sure.
Their stuff's good. I think
very good.
Yeah,
from high quality.
Yeah, from the number of stuff that I've seen and the number of hits that come from there, I think they've got a really great ratio.
And dude, unless you know how these types of pieces of content are made, people have no idea what goes into making their hit show a hit. Dude, it is unfucking believable. I always say that, it's the people behind the camera that make the action happen. Literally. I've been on so many sets and watching these things being made, and it just looks ridiculous. It looks like a high school play when they're filming it. And then you see it on TV and you're like, it did not fucking look like that. it did.
I look like a high school play.
No, literally. It's like, you see two big actors and you know who these actors are, and you're watching them retake the same scene over and over and over again. And it doesn't look, there's your eye, you're just seeing it as it's real, right? And then when you throw in the coloring and the lenses, the distortion that lenses create, all these elements, and then you watch it on TV and you're just, holy shit, it did not look like that. And the amount of time, people just don't understand, even when things aren't good, even if you watch a movie or TV show and it's not good, now that I've been through all this, I have such appreciation for the people behind the camera that do all the work, because it's truly incredible. It's actually amazing to me how they get stuff out on time. And nowadays, because everything is even streamed to the movie theaters and everything, they literally can work on movies, I think, up to 2 or 3 weeks before its release. So, a lot of these productions, they are working, or even with these TV shows where there's multiple episodes in a season, they'll release the first 3 episodes because they know that buys them 3 weeks, but they're still working on the last 1 or 2, right? Because, there's just so many, especially that, even in business too, it's amazing how the reason why it's so hard to forecast and determine how long things are going to take is because we underestimate that last 5%. It's the last 5% of anything that's big takes 95% of the time. And it goes for, at least what I've experienced in my entrepreneurial life, it's almost constant. Anytime our developers say it's going to take this long, I'm always adding this buffer because I know there's a 5% thing in there that we're not accounting for that's probably going to take longer. Same thing with financials and all that type of stuff. So in the movie business, it's truly incredible that they can pick a release date and hit it without having to 2 weeks out be okay, we need to not release this. We'll release it some other time. And a lot of people also don't realize, and I didn't know this, but a lot of movies and TV, sometimes they're not even released. They'll go into production, they'll film it, they'll go into post-production, and they just never finish it because it's hard to make. And to see the level of content that Netflix creates is truly, it's just fucking inspiring. When you know what it takes to make even something that's not a good show, it's still to make it look professional and sound professional.
Did you see Dahmer?
I did.
Dude.
I did. That guy.
Dude, that guy was something else.
That guy was yeah. Next time if one of my neighbors, if there's a smell coming from the house.
I saw a T-shirt on Twitter for like, you know, was it the Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It said and it said Dahmer went to Ohio State.
Oh my god, that's actually kind of funny.
I know, it's like hilarious.
Yeah. And
so what's going on? What's exciting for you this year? What are you working on?
The technology. I can't really discuss what we're finishing up, but a lot of what we've been building in 2022, we're going to be releasing in 2023, particularly the first and second quarter of this year. A lot, it's like I said, it's color related, it's integration related. We got some really interesting partnerships that are kind of forming that I can't talk about right now, but I think they could be, definitely really cool partnerships. So I'm excited about that. And it's just, it's continued stability. Like, one of the problems that we had in 2021 was in 2020, it was like 1,400% growth. I mean, it was nuts. So, and it's, when you're a software founder specifically, you build a piece of technology planning to scale, but you never truly know if your technology is going to scale until you actually do scale. And most companies don't scale like this, right? So
ship breaks.
Absolutely. Yeah. So all of a sudden, for some miracle in 2020, we almost had no issues, which is amazing. But all of a sudden in 2021, the volume keeps increasing. And then there's this moment, I think it was probably February 21, where we hit this line. And all of a sudden our AWS started crashing and servers weren't shutting down and our autoscaler wasn't working. And it just became, this intense battle. I mean, obviously our investors wanted us to grow. And at the same time, we got clients who want us to build new features. And at the same time, we're trying to fix what our platform, like all the things that are wrong with the platform, right? So
technical debt, all that stuff.
Dude, technical debt, hardcore.
Yeah.
So it's like what Elon actually has a great quote where he goes, and I relate to this because he's like, it's like going down the freeway in a bus at 90 miles an hour and you have to change 2 of the tires, but the bus can't stop. It's like what was it? Speed, the movie?
Yeah. Second favorite movie.
Second favorite. Yeah. Exactly. Whoa. So yeah. All you Keanu Reeves fans know what that is.
John Wick, man.
John Wick's
badass.
John Wick is super badass, and I hope they keep making 100 of them.
I know, dude. I'll watch every single one.
Every single one. But yeah. So I mean, 2021 was this. If I was speaking to entrepreneurs who ever go through that type of scale, it's that you can't fix your platform, grow revenue, and improve your platform all at the same time. You kind of have to pick and choose a little bit what you're going to spend your time on, right? So, looking back at it now, and again, it was 2021. So, I mean, companies were just getting bought left and right, and it was, it was crazy. Yeah. It was just nuts, right? And so, we should have probably have taken a step back to kind of complete the foundation of the platform before trying to scale more. Now, luckily, we survived it. We got through everything. It was very, very difficult. But, now our uptime has been incredible. Right? We're at the 5 nines basically. And, everything has worked itself out. But I can tell you that it was, again, there was the pre-COVID challenges and then there were the post-COVID challenges. And every company, I guess, goes through these types of plateaus, right? And along that way, you're going to, you have people who stay, you have people who go, you've got 70 challenges. It's always those unknown unknowns that will fuck you every time. But it's how you handle the unknown unknowns that I think kind of make the difference between whether or not you even have a chance of succeeding as an entrepreneur or not. Because I mean, honestly, just basing it off of my own experience, I think entrepreneurship is highly glorified. To be sexy, but it really does suck. And I don't think most people are cut out for it.
No,
I don't even think I was cut out for it. But it was like a survival thing, right? Where it's like, well, I'm fucking already in now. I'm already in for a few $1 million. I'm not going to give up now, so sometimes you don't know what you're capable of until you get into it.
And then half of them are just like, like you have to have something wrong with you, really, like to do it. And it's like, and then like part of it is like, I think half of the founders are probably like antisocial,
absolutely,
like kind of like, a little bit of a sociopath.
Yes, exactly. You don't want to come here. Don't be near my house at night. The lights out. No, I think there's definitely, I think what happens is I think you do kind of like a weightlifting, you do become, you get like the callus, right? And you things that were once hard, like the stress that I've had to handle over the last year and a half. I mean, if that would have happened any time in my life before that, I don't think I ever would have been able to handle that stress, right? So it's a big part of it is just, if you're able to survive long enough and you surround yourself around good enough people, and that's another huge thing, dude. Like the people who I have around me now, our investor group, our board, our team, like, man, we're just fucking firing on all cylinders now. But it was so difficult to get there.
And I smacked around a little bit.
Oh, smacked around a lot. Yeah. And by the way, I was looking at some of your the podcasts that you did, and you did one with Melissa from Lighter. That was cool. That was really cool. We actually used Lighter.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, Lighter saved our ass.
Yeah, she's a badass.
Yeah, no, she's super badass.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I mean, like when we ran into some financial troubles in 2021 for a little bit, they worked with us and,
shout out to Lighter.
Lighter.
This podcast is brought to you by Lighter Capital.
Lighter absolutely did save us when we needed them at the time. And they worked with us when things got a little rocky there for a bit. So, Melissa, thank you to you and your team for definitely stepping up for us when we needed
That's
to.
awesome. She's one of the good ones for sure.
Yep. But I will say that, for entrepreneurs looking for capital options, there's pros and cons to equity and there's pros and cons to debt.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
a market, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's a market.
Absolutely.
So a couple quick canned questions before we end. Favorite book?
Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Yep. Perfect. Best piece of business advice?
Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
Okay, nice. And third, and the most important, which did you have a better time on? Hamid's podcast or my podcast?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Don't even lie.
I love Hamid, man.
Hamid's great, but I'm going to tell you something.
But I'm going to tell you, this one, pretty good.
I mean, your affect, you're a lot more animated. I dropped an F-bomb, you just sort of like all giddy and giggly.
Dude, I got a little reverb on my voice, I think. No, I mean, but this has been amazing. And I was grateful. And thank you for Philip for, setting this up. Philip, I met at some Chase event a few weeks ago. But and what you're doing is really important, whether it's from the entrepreneurial side or from the investor side. I think it's a great sneak peek into kind of like what's going on both in the business world and also the investment world.
And you got a podcast coming up?
I do. Yeah. We're still working.
Shit.
HowEasyItIsn't.com, where we've already released a bunch of episodes, but it's content based around the entrepreneurial struggle and what we have to go through to be as insane as we are.
Love it.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Capital Stack, where we talk to founders, operators, and investors about all things value creation and startups. We drop an episode every Tuesday on all your platforms, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. If you like it, please tell a friend, leave a review, cancel me, do whatever, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Capital Stack Podcast. Make sure to share this with someone you know that can benefit from this content. Remember to support this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. David Paul is the founder and general partner at DWP Capital. All opinions expressed by David and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of DWP Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. David and guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed on this podcast.